This is sort of the toughest question. And in a way, in my role, like I feel like I'm constantly under the gun, right? Uh, when I took on this role for connectivity platform about less than a year back, I gave myself 5% chance to succeed.
Okay. Hello and welcome to Declassified, Ather's community podcast where we talk about the things happening behind the scenes and what's cooking at Ather. This is Abhishek, and in this episode, we catch up with Priya, who's heading product for software, which includes the connectivity and the smart experience. Yeah, Priya, anything more you want to add to your introduction?
No, I mean, besides the fact that I've been at Ather for about 3 years now, and it still feels like I'm just starting off.
Yeah. Cool. So I'm going to slightly go deeper into this mobility space, right? While I'm probably oversimplifying market segments a lot, like in I think most people's heads there are people who use a scooter as a utilitarian product, right? Like say someone who's lived in a city for 20 years, 30 years, right? Or even long enough that they know the areas, they know the routes, right? Where they don't need such alerts or navigation or any real time stuff, right? Then there are the other kind of people who require it. Like I know personally I am sort of directionally challenged, right? I've been in Bangalore for a few years now, and I need navigation anywhere I go. So whether it's on the Ather or any other vehicle, I need Google Maps open to know when to take a left or when to take a right, right? Um, so with when we are designing a product, like I think with the 450 or the 450X, with any future models that might come up, right? How do we figure out what, especially in the connectivity and smarts, what is good to have and what is like a must have in the products? Because I've seen over the years on the forum where a lot of people have just come and said, just remove the dashboard and just give me only a fast scooter, and I would be really happy with that. And uh, I think that's coming from a point of view of like them feeling that it's not a required experience for them, and also this feeling of it being like a significant cost addition to the vehicle, right? So how do we think of the product as such?
So I'll answer it this way, right? People saying that they don't need dashboard, just give me a fast scooter. You're just randomly adding cost to the scooter and so on, comes from the fact that while we say we are connected, we have barely scratched the surface in terms of what we are solving for, right? As you said, there would be a good number of people for whom navigation may not be the most relevant thing because they have lived in the same city for 10 years. They know the gullies, the different places to go to. It's literally there in the back of their heads, right? They don't even use Google Maps. So navigation as a solution for them is not relevant. But that is the problem where we are at, right? As in, connectivity is a tech that can actually solve a lot more problems even for those customers. For example, today we do have theft and tow detection. It's a very invisible feature to the customers, right? As I said, in future we want to add lot more to the using this tech to the experience. As I said, right, like something like task reminder, giving real time alerts of like hey, go service your vehicle because these are the health alerts that you have, right? These are things that are still not, I would say, fully built in, and which is why the customers are not able to see the value of what connected can do. What we strongly believe is that once we are able to build this in with the vehicle and have the customers use it, they cannot imagine a future without it. And at the cost of sounding a bit arrogant, I'll probably say that this is sort of the jump we would expect for people having used, say, only feature phones to when smartphones came. And it, in a very short while, like, people actually forgot about the existence of feature phones, right? It's very hard to imagine life without a smartphone today, and that is where we believe that even this technology can go. But to be honest, we have not built, and that is sort of the miss we had, where we have just built very basic capabilities, called it connected tech, and in the process gave the impression to the customers that we have ended up adding a lot of cost for not commensurate value to what they were getting.
I'll come to this value part in a bit, but Swapnil had this very interesting blog post, right, of few years back, where he talked about the kind of technologies that are being used in a 450 at that time, right? And one of the things that kind of stuck with me is he called this a software defined vehicle, right? And for this episode, I was actually researching a bit about the history of connectivity in automobiles, right? And very interesting thing was it started somewhere in 1980s with F1, where they wanted telemetry about the when the cars are going around the track, right? And they wanted to study it and improve on it. So it started off at telemetry, and then I think it somewhere in the middle went into the space of infotainment, where we had you had the initial radio, and then you had the RDS, I think, where you had more information about what is playing on the radio and all of that. Then you had the Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, and today even regular petrol cars are coming with an option where you can get some sort of telemetry. You can unlock doors remotely and all of that, right? While that's all really good and fancy and good add-ons, right? With respect to two-wheelers, how would you say this is useful in terms of, if you say it's software defined vehicle, how do we see use cases for this connectivity and smarts beyond things on the dashboard?
So, I mean, let me start addressing the telemetry part. I honestly believe that today, maybe barring Tesla, nobody has really cracked the potential of connectivity, or as you're saying, the software-defined vehicle fully, right? For most of us, the imagination has just gotten restricted to telemetry, saying that, I mean, there is a bunch of consultant published reports, and I'm speaking as an ex-consultant myself, that basically quite confidently said that, like, oh yes, connectivity platform has the most potential in vehicle diagnostics, predictive maintenance, and all related to telemetry. But and that is where I'm going towards, that we have not really broken out of our hardwiring. Like, this is still for me an incremental improvement to what driving a vehicle is, be it two-wheeler or four-wheeler, right? The examples I'm giving actually go beyond that. It goes behind the purpose of why you want to go out and and do something, and actually starts addressing things that are not necessarily just related to the act of riding or even act of owning. Like the whole vehicle maintenance for me is still an asset ownership problem. It is not the mobility problem, right?
Okay.
So when you're asking about, like, what is the value for this, right? See, there are different motivations that this tech can solve. So one is very basically, it is cost motivation, and that comes from the fact that, okay, EVs, as a total cost of ownership, it's cheaper. But how do I maximize the life of the vehicle? How do I maximize the life of the battery? That happens through this connected tech, because we can do, eventually our goal should be like a 0% downtime of the vehicle. And when it comes to maximizing life of the battery, like, how can we build an experience of almost invisible charging in such a way that we ourselves tell, or rather have this run in the background, where charging happens as per the rider's ride pattern or behavior, but it is also optimized to maximize the life of the battery. Something that, say, AirPods does, for those who use AirPods, right? You see that you put it in the case, and the smart charging is playing, is actually running in the background. But that is still a cost motivation. Like, when it comes to convenience, And these are the examples I was giving. Think about being able to remember, like how often have people forgotten that, okay, like out of 10 things, I forgot like to get 2 things done.
Right.
How often there would have been need to say that, like somebody, say be your spouse or friend, saying that, hey, if you're coming here on the way, can you get me this, and would have missed that message, right? How often people would have to go stop somewhere to inform that, hey, I'm running 10 minutes late, right? So all of these are actually hassles to even like riding, and that's what makes it a chore, right? So imagine the convenience part that can get solved, where you're just enjoying the, like, you're riding, like, in, like, and as smoothly as possible. But all the other things that are going in your mind, hey, I remember everything I need to do, etc., is completely taken off. The other motivation is on the safety. Imagine what kind of anxiety people have today when their loved ones are like out riding, out in a two-wheeler, and they're not back. So somebody's running late from office. Somebody's stuck in rain and, like, or in the traffic. Like how many times, like, a parent or a spouse would have been like making the calls, like, are you back? Are you there? Etc. So imagine something like an SOS capability, right? All because, and we set it up in such a way that they get the help fastest as they can. Imagine like a crash alert, fall alert kind of a detection, right? And this is something that would be useful even to the kind of people you talked about, like who don't need navigation, but everybody needs like safety as a requirement, right? And going further, like how do we make like ride, like, this whole going out experience fun? Today it should not be a chore. Like it is not like, okay, I have to go do grocery shopping and, like, okay, let me finish this. Like how do we make it like fun? Like imagine everybody is a hobbyist. Like, I mean, let's say you love books, and you are on your way to, say, buy some vegetables, but you cross blossoms. We use geo alerts to say that, hey, do you want to spend some time here because there is this going on. That this aspect completely changes the experience of actually going out, right? I mean, with this I would imagine that people would actually want to go to the restaurant or like buy themselves instead of like ordering via Swiggy.
Right.
But yeah, and that is really the vision that we are looking towards.
That's interesting. But before we go to what are the future possibilities and stuff, right? Coming back to what is the situation on ground, I think just if you look at the last 2 years, right? I think with the 450, the connectivity experience was very very good, right, initially, and then 3G kind of shut down, and that caused some chaos. But I think the dashboard was a bit laggy. The hardware seemed a bit underpowered, right? And then we finally had the 450X where we said, hey, we're moving from Linux to Android, and this opens up a lot more possibilities. We got 4G, right? And then I think when we started delivering a lot of scooters initially, honestly the connectivity experience or the dashboard experience was fairly bad, right? There were downtimes, there were cases of data loss, there were times where people didn't have network on the dashboard and all of that. So what's like the inside story behind this? Because clearly there was something that was going on during that time that we were trying to do or trying to build with the 450X. Aside, I think there is the strongest reason that that we now have is that moving platforms is not easy, right? Developing something for Linux and then moving to Android is not simple. And while we did a decent job of it, I think there were other things that were also happening behind the scenes. So what were they?
This is sort of the toughest question, and in a way, in my role, like I feel like I'm constantly under the gun, right? I remember, when I took on this role for connectivity platform about less than a year back, I gave myself 5% chance to succeed.
Okay.
And I remember telling Tarun that you will not find many people like this because I have a high risk appetite even towards my career.
Right.
But on a more serious note, right? So I mean, there are several layers. Firstly, fully 100% acknowledge that we are nowhere near where we want our experience to be in terms of connectivity. While I talked about the future or the art of the possible or how the future would look like, today like from a tech point of view, there are a lot of things that we need to solve. But let me, break this down, right? Like, where are our, I would say, like, fault lines in this case, right? Firstly, we need to ensure that we have a stable connectivity, right? Like, forget about dashboard, like our features working, like right stats, computation, and all that. We need to very fundamentally first if this entire experience has to work, we need to ensure that a vehicle is communicating with all the other devices, be it the app, be it our cloud servers, or like the maps on the dashboard communicating with Google servers. It's communicating in a reliable way. That is still is a big problem area. And a lot of times, a lot of people even outside confuse that, hey, if my mobile phone is working so well, like with the same vendor that you guys have, why is the vehicle connectivity not so poor? The reality is that the mobile network as well as is different from the IoT and M2M network. And most of the players, in fact, no, not most, all the players, be it Airtel, Jio, Vodafone, etc., are only like still new entrants to this whole IoT network. So it has a completely different infra. It has a completely different hub, a different team, different NOC, different tech team at their end. To actually manage this network. So the experience or the kind of reliability we have with connectivity from the infra point of view today, I would say, is something where mobile network used to be, say, about 10-15 years back. When I think all of us remember now, like the kind of level of call drops that used to happen, right? So that is where we are today. What this means for us is that we need to work with those partners, and the best thing is that they are like one of the reasons why a huge telco would actually spend a lot of time talking to a startup like us is because they want to solve this problem together. But this also means that it will take some time to get that kind of reliability.
Right.
The best we can do is build in some kind of, say, a fallback mechanism to the fault, to these kind of failure modes, right? So an example would be when we have bad network. We have a way of batching and storing the data in the vehicle and then sending it back to the servers when the network is back up. But this all, like, end of the day, this is still, I would say, more of like putting in some kind of a band-aid over a problem, right? Like fundamentally, that reliability of the ecosystem itself needs to be solved. And that is something we are actually working with our partners to solve for. We are exploring options of, say, like, some portability depending on, like, where the networks are. We are looking at Bluetooth as an option. How can we expand that, and so on. But this is a hard problem to solve, and that is something we are working on. It will take some time.
So we talked about the hardware side of things, right? But even if you consider IoT in general as an industry, right? I don't think we've seen a lot of devices which use these M2M SIMs. I think the only example that I've come across so far, and at least in my limited research, is the POS machines that I use, the credit card swiping machines, right, which use M2M SIMs. But other than that, we haven't seen examples. So, we had to create a platform entirely ourselves, right, where data would come from the scooter and it would get processed and then it would be shown on say an app on a dashboard, managing an entire fleet. So what was it like building that platform?
So I think one of the things that we ourselves realized the hard way, right, is like the amount of data, like, our vehicle is sending, which is the, like, telemetry data, the session stop, like, key on, key off, like those, session definition data and all that. So you touched upon the whole M2M part. So that required some level of work on our end as well as on our partner's end in order to configure the network. Then in between we had this whole IPv4 v6 battle, where the regular mobile network was compatible with both v4 v6, whereas in the case of IoT, it got mandated that everybody should be on v6. So the whole migration, and to IPv6 and making sure that all the endpoints as well as the device is compatible with this protocol took some time. So these are, I would say, the battles we are constantly fighting when it comes to just the connectivity part of IoT, right? The second problem area that you have touched upon is the data platform, which is the system, or the, like, basically the whole cloud server system that ingests the data from the vehicle and processes it, and like basically transforms the data and sends it to different applications. One of those applications is actually write stats, right? That is, I would say, like, it's interesting for us as an as an engineering challenge, just because of the scale it has. So every vehicle on average sends like 20 GB of data per month.
Okay.
So imagine, as we scale, right, that's like we are talking in terms of terabytes and petabytes coming in per month. And we are talking in terms of, like, say, millions of events hitting our, like, different points of our data platform every second and every minute. This is crazy scale. And as our vehicles, say, number of vehicles continue to grow, it would even exceed the scale of what we have in e-commerce companies today. Because in e-commerce companies, data does not go like after, like, every, like, say, at the rate of 10 hertz or 100 hertz, which is what we have. Like, so just figuring out not just the throughput of the data, which is insane, but also figuring out how to handle this level or variety of data. Like, we today process, or like the kind of, the parameters we have almost like close to 600 to 700 different data parameters.
Okay.
So just identifying that, okay, this is coming, this is not corrupted, and we have, say, 450x as two different models, so we have to standardize. Then we have to do any sort of sanity checks, right? Like, okay, this is good data. Then send it down further for processing. Then we add or compute, like, okay, like, what is the the maximum speed, what is the acceleration, what is the efficiency. All of this computation is happening real time, by the way, right? And then store the data, retrieve the data for, say, R&D use cases, retrieve the data when somebody wants to check, okay, for this vehicle last month, what was this parameter showing because this vehicle has come to service, right? All of that is like fairly hard data engineering problem. And I think this is something that like the solving for scale is actually, like, right now our number one priority in this year. I mean, last year itself, we were somewhere around the size of a mid-sized e-commerce. And this year, in the coming year, we'll probably, like, get at par with, like, a fairly, say, like a mature startup size in terms of the scale.
Okay.
And we have to do this also within the constraint of cost, right? Because to both ingest and handle this much of data can just like blow up the cost, that at some point your connectivity cost might be, like, say, significant part of your vehicle, like, say, parts cost. So even solving for cost is something that's important. In fact, in between, we were talking to like, generally, because we speak to our peers in other OEMs as well. Even the cost structure we have achieved today on the connectivity is something that has surprised them. Like, they are probably at 3x at where we are.
Wow. Okay.
But we believe that we still need to go further down, like, basically get better in terms of having that optimized structure.
Next, we'll just talk a little bit about the platform part of things, right? When we talk about a platform, what comes to my head is like making it a bit more generic and accessible, so that if there are any new products that come in, even like, forget scooters, right? It could be a car, it could be a truck, it could be someone else who's looking to use this. We have a system where you can ingest data, you can process it, and you can deliver some insights or results or whatever is required, right? Why have we taken on this task of doing it? Is there any advantage for Ather to be building this?
So I would disagree that we had this system.
No, we didn't have this. Our systems were very specific to 450, I remember. Right? It was like, okay, there are these 46 sensors in the vehicle, and you have data coming in from exactly these 46 sensors, and everything was hard coded, right? That's not a platform. right? That's a software that is built specifically for one product, right? But a platform is something different. So what is why have we gotten into that journey?
Yeah, so see, when it goes with the same thing, making anything modular, standardized is part of the optimization and software maturity journey. When you're building your first version, trying to do this would be considered like over engineering. Okay, like when the job is like, does 450 sell? Is would people love 450? Like imagine we were at a stage where there was no viable high performant EV. So in that phase, trying to figure out standardization of a platform would be like being way too ahead of ourselves. At that time, the focus should be, and as it rightly was, how do we launch a viable product into the market? And which is why whatever it took to build the kind of product we wanted, including the connectivity part, like which is we agreed that we'll build navigation, some right stats, like say theft and tow and so on. That is exactly what we want to deliver. We would at that point, like in any like first model, we would not think of platformization, standardization, etc. So that was the reason why things were there at that point. Once we figured out that okay, like 450 has met its product market fit, then we went towards 450x, where the focus was on improving some of the performance better, but at the same time, the cost optimization started.
Yeah.
That was the time around which even the connectivity side optimization started. Like I said, right, like we were at like just the material cost was around 450 to 500 per month per vehicle. That work also started. But when that started, one of the things then we did take into consideration was, now how do we make this like a standardized platform? And we started the journey towards that. For example, we want the same platform to be compatible with 450 as well as 450x.
Right.
Like just because the data, the models and everything are different between the two, we don't want like one data platform for 450, one for 450x, and in future whatever else comes in, like having one more like for each. It's a waste of effort as well, right? So that's where that whole what you call as platformization journey started. We still haven't reached that level yet, but we have come quite close. And we probably in the next few months, we'll get to a point where we can add any new model or variant, say within 1 month, completely, like, with just 1 month's effort, we will be able to sort of connect with, or, with any new model that we have. And we can further expand that to like, to have this kind of a platform compatible with even models outside of Ather, like maybe even four-wheeler and so on. So that is a journey we started taking, and we are actually quite close to it.
Yeah, I think this came upon us because we're one of the first ones to be so bullish on the whole connected and smart experience, right?
Correct.
Okay. So I think we've talked about a lot of things, but if you could just summarize what we're planning to do in the next 2-3 years, right, in terms of the connected experience, like sure, it sounds great when you say, when I pass blossoms, there'll be some alert that comes in, and maybe I'll get some 20% discount, or like a lot of things, right? But practically, what do you see happening in the next few years?
I'm so glad you're asking practically. Hey, we are in the same company, right? No, so very honestly, my own job depends on getting us to product market fit within the next 12 months. So I'm not even talking about 2-3 years. So we have identified certain themes that we want to solve towards. So one is we want to make the whole maps experience much better. I think we have had certain challenges with, say, like basically restrictions rather, right? Like with Google Maps. Especially considering that their maps was not meant for two-wheelers. Like as I talked about the whole Android certification, right? Similar challenges happened even on the maps side. So when customers ask why is traffic information not there, this is the reason we can't.
No, even in Mumbai, I think a few people have talked about it, where there are certain restrictions on certain roads, and where two-wheelers cannot go. I think Western
Correct.
Expressway or something,
Yeah.
and the map still shows. So yeah, that I think is pretty evident. Yeah.
Correct. So we are evaluating how to actually solve this so that we give the maps experience as close to what is there. Obviously, like what people see in the mobile phone. Uh, I think a lot of people are aware that we are working towards a feature called Trip Planner. This is something in when we put this in Ather Labs, a lot of people have shown interest in this. So that is actually underway. It's right now in alpha stage, but it has immense scope. Like all the way from just telling, okay, where should you charge? We want to able to also tell them like how much you need to charge for a particular trip. Then we want to add things like multi-stop.
Right.
Then we want to give people real-time alerts. Then we want to even recommend a mode that if you go with your regular driving style, you need to charge here. But if you say switch to eco mode, you can avoid charging.
Right.
Right. So basically, keep on adding more real-time capabilities as well as geolocation alerts into that whole feature. That's going to be a year-long roadmap, and that is what we are working towards. Another area that we are working towards is how do we make charging invisible, where we are able to add like basically smart tech on charging so that it maximizes the life of the vehicle. At the same time, it caters to the driving needs of the people, right? And that is personalized. Like some people may need like full charge every day because that is the kind of distance they have to travel. Some people probably just need like like maybe like just use 5 or 10% charge every day.
Right.
So for each of their requirements of say riding, how do we make this charging completely, I would say, like invisible from people's anxieties, right? Like nobody enjoys the act of charging.
Yeah.
We just want people to, okay, you know what, just plug your vehicle as soon as you find the charging point and forget about it. Like the brain behind it will figure out how much you need to charge, whether it's the vehicle requires charging or not, and so on, right? So that is something we are working towards. Another area is, okay, like I think ride stats has been something that has been fairly popular with the customers, but a lot of people also said that like, okay, like after a few months it becomes boring because my ride is not changing.
Yeah.
I think we recently launched savings tracker, which again picked up quite a bit of interest, but then it came like, I don't know how you're computing it.
Correct.
But we want to make the whole what do you say, the experience of say like the analytics itself like quite fun. It's almost like think of this Strava or say or any of these Fitbit related stats, right?
Instead of just showing me data, I think
Exactly, like
you need
visualization
insights
and
outcomes,
say like how much charge you're taken and so on, right? I think you have already seen Smart Eco. So Smart Eco is something that is out in beta today. And this is extremely innovative, by the way, that has come more from an engineering, like say...
very deep tech.
Exactly,
kind of
like
thing,
as an idea that we could not, as product would have like assumed that it is, say, possible, right? It's basically turning the whole concept of mode upside down. Like a mode would be, how do I fix, say, maximum current output, and hence there is a max top speed and max acceleration this can go to. Whereas this mode has completely reversed it, saying that I'll fix your distance where you have to go, which is your range, as in 85 kilometers in the case of say 450x, and I'll adjust based on your riding style. That we want to further expand into, say, like people being able to set at different efficiency and distance targets, right? So because one of the things we observed is like people don't really change the modes much when they drive. Most people drive in like it's a habitual thing. They get comfortable. But the thing is, why should a person need like having to go to a 10-kilometer distance versus a 70-kilometer distance be on the same mode, right? That's where a mode like this helps, where you say that you can have a smart mode set for 10 kilometers and you have the power available for that much mode. And then you have a smart mode set for, say, 75 kilometers. You have the power available for that much. And you are ensured that you'll get back as long as you use this mode. You'll like your getting back home is assured. So that's another thing that we are working on, and we are working on this, as I said, right? These integrations with task reminders, etc. The geolocation alerts that I mentioned, when you pass through a certain area, it reminds you had this task here. So that's another thing in our roadmap.
So what was interesting about the things that you mentioned was all of these are part of Ather Labs, right?
Hmm.
I think we've introduced Ather Labs a bit, but um, and there are other companies like Google or specifically Gmail which have labs, or other companies also have experimental programs where you can opt in for a few features, right? So
Hmm.
what is the intent of Ather Labs? Like, what do we want to do with it? Because I don't think a lot of people know that the some of the features might disappear. So what's happening over there?
Ather Labs was something, as I said, we conceived when we decided that we want to focus on this roadmap. So our first problem statement was to actually see, okay, what is of value to the customers, and we did competitive research, benchmarking with other companies, and we realized that if anybody who has to figure out what product to build with connected tech, right, it's going to be us,
Mm-hmm.
because nobody else has solved it so far. But what that meant was that we also wanted this, like any new tech, right, requires constant feedback. It requires constant tweaking, iterations, and so on. Some of these could also be bad bets, and which means that we should not basically keep on investing in it, but kill it, right? So we were thinking, what is the best way to actually get this done? And we figured that most of the companies which have this kind of good R&D labs actually have like a labs program
Mm-hmm.
where they do more of controlled, say, pilot releases to the customers.
Which are not beta programs. That's
Correct,
different.
correct,
Yeah.
correct. Beta would be more of, I have this feature, is it working well,
Okay.
right?
Hmm.
Labs would be, I have this feature, is this useful for you?
Hmm.
Okay,
Okay.
so very different thing, right? And are you is it usable for you? Is it easy to use for you? These are the questions we wanted to understand, like something like a trip planner, right? I- as we were starting to scope, we realized it's a very complex uh, interaction that we have to solve for the customer, right? All the way from somebody who would be like, say, a 65-year-old, say, like a mom, right, to somebody who is, say, like extremely tech savvy and auto enthu, right? For both these groups, right, how do we build an experience that still solves for the problem, that okay, you can plan your trip of whether you can go out or come back.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the things that require constant tweaking and us to have the ability to get the insights from the customers. Like for example, when we put trip planner in Ather Labs, we had this express interest and we had this question mandated where
Yeah.
people had to answer that how this feature is useful. It was immense gold mine for us. Like we had not anticipated the use cases that they told us,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where we figured that, oh, okay, like for example, people thought that if they have to use a public charging, they'll get stuck for 1.5 hours, because our the what's there in people's mind is that, oh, okay, like any 0 to 80% charging in a public grid is 1.5 hours,
Okay. Hmm.
whereas technically you could have just needed a 10 minutes top up, right, which is
Right.
as
Right.
much as
Hmm.
probably like waiting at a petrol
Hmm.
station.
Hmm. Hmm.
So you're like, okay, why don't we tell customers like to your for your trip you just need so much.
Hmm.
So these kind of very nuanced insights was where was what we kept in mind when we wanted to build Ather Labs as a platform where we can release experimental features. Even Smart Eco that way, super experimental. No other company has built a feature like this.
Yeah.
It took a lot of effort, even on our end, to see like, okay, how do we communicate how this feature works, right? And even now we are getting the feedback from customers that how are they experiencing, what is working, what is not working, and that's why we already know now what we need to do in our next version to improve, right? So that is the intent behind Ather Labs. And as I said, some of these features could actually be not so useful. They may just, like, people may say that okay, like, I mean, and it shows in like how many people are using a feature, right? So there is no point just keep on investing behind a feature when it's not so useful. So we want a way to actually kill that. Whereas those features which are being useful and
Mm-hmm.
we have gotten enough feedback to actually have getting to a stage where it is fairly stable, we want to graduate them away, like out of the labs, and put them into like as a mainstream feature on either on the dashboard or mobile app, right, as an experience. So that is the intent behind Ather Labs.
So to be clear, features over there are not buggy.
No, absolutely
It's
not.
not. It's not like half-written
No.
code or anything. It's fairly stable for regular use, but we haven't figured out how to position that feature or to whom it's actually going to be useful for.
Correct. Correct.
Okay, so it's like an experimentation.
Correct. Like, for example, when we put savings tracker, right? I don't think many people understood or realized, because we did not communicate that through feature, that it is net savings. It is net of the petrol cost that the people incur,
Mhm.
minus the electricity cost they would have incurred
Oh,
because of
okay,
the charging.
okay, right.
It is actually net savings. Even the CO2 emissions is net emissions. Like, we have taken the emissions because of the electricity consumption. So that's actually fantastic because it's very real savings for them. It is not of, okay, like, something where we are only showing it like, okay, only against the fuel cost.
Not potential savings.
Correct. It's also about like the fact that we keep changing the fuel prices based on based on like every month where the fuel is. So people don't know how that is computed. So while a lot of people gave the feedback that it's a great feature, they immediately followed by asking, how do you compute it? Can I trust this number?
Yeah.
Right. So this is an improvement for us to work on. We want to see how we can actually communicate better as well as get it closer to the accuracy or that the users want.
This savings tracker feedback was very funny because when I think we initially talked about it, the whole point was to reduce the mental load of people, and then they came back and said, "Give me all the options to input all the data points." Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's interesting feedback. Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to sort of touch upon? Any nice forward-looking statements that we can end with?
Not so much. All I can say is, by the way, this has been a great interaction. And as I said, this next 12 months is our road towards product market fit, which you had to made me explain by looking into the camera. And I just hope that everyone participates actively on Ather Labs and keeps sharing the feedback, all the feature requests that people have put on forum. The thing is, we do look at it. It's just that we were late to actually start working towards it. But those are the kind of feedback we are taking. We are reaching out to customers a lot, even for one-on-one conversations. And please look forward to the next year for a lot of exciting features that are coming on the way.
Thanks for all the insights. It was a fun chat.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.